Okay.
Good evening, everyone. We're glad you're with us tonight. We are interviewing a very interesting resident tonight. It is Steve Sykes. And Alinda has been friends with Steve and his family for many, many years, so we've invited her to be part of Steve's story. I'm hoping she'll just keep him on the straight and narrow as he talks. I brought a little poem with me about Thanksgiving. I thought maybe we all needed a different idea of Thanksgiving for this year. It says, no ghosts or goblins or tricks or treats, no candy, no flowers for your sweets, no gifts to buy, no presents to give. Just be thankful for the life that you live. God bless us all. And now we'll turn to Steve. Welcome.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. And as she said, my name is Steve Sykes, and my accent sort of gives me away. I was born, a lot of you remember probably the Ballad of Davy Crockett, that song in the 50s, and born on a mountaintop in Tennessee, raised in the woods, so he knew every tree. That was me. That was me. But I was born in the upstairs of my grandparents' home, and the doctor that was supposed to deliver me was a day late. He didn't get there till the following day, but it didn't seem to make any difference. People used to do that, but like I said, I grew up in a little town in Tennessee, right at the foothills of the Smokies, and my mom and dad, and I had a brother and a sister, one 2 years older and one 2 years younger, and maybe we grew up not having very much, but it didn't seem to bother us at all. We didn't know it. Nobody else did either. It was just the way the times were. But we lived on a small farm, and that's where I got my bit for agriculture, and we milked cows and had chickens and hogs, and we killed hogs every year and grew big gardens, and we were truck farmers. We raised a lot of tomatoes and carrots and beets and all kinds of vegetables, and my dad sold those on the side. But I went to school about 4 miles from where we lived in a small, we had 12 grades in one school, and there was all of 600 students in all 12 grades. So it was a small school, and we were all very close knit. And tell
us a little bit about your presidency during the school, when you were at school.
Well, my senior year, I was president of my senior class. Yes, ma'am. I went back to a reunion, and many years after that, and my chemistry teacher was saying little blips about everybody, and he said, "Now, Steve Sykes," he says, "one time, the most thing I remember about him, I gave a essay test, and Steve wrote me the most beautiful paragraph that I have ever had a student to write." He said there wasn't but one thing wrong. It didn't have a thing to do about the question I asked. So, doing homework and studying, it was a side thing. I was more involved in the farm. And we were so rural that in the spring, when we planted tobacco, we grew burley tobacco. It was an excused absence from school to stay home and help with the tobacco planting, and the same in the fall with the harvest. So definitely a small community. But we were a very church-oriented family. I grew up that way, and I contribute a lot. Well, my success on my Christian faith and what it's done for me. But I graduated high school, and I started college at East Tennessee State, and I was there about a year, and my dad thought that, well, you need to You need to work somewhere and try to earn your own way. And I worked on a grade A dairy farm along with another college student, and we worked about 40 hours a week. Well, that didn't leave much time for school. So after about a year and a half, I said, I can't take this. I've got to do something else. So I got I missed the part. My dad had little restaurants on the side too, so I'd learned to work in the restaurants on the weekends, and that was my real first job in Virginia. I came to Virginia, and I was a night cook in a small restaurant. And while I was there, I met this guy that was staying at the motel where I was working, and he was a field service man for Holly Farms Poultry, and that's how I got my job at Holly Farms, was through him. I got to know him by feeding him every night there at the restaurant, and he would hang around and stay later all the time. So it was, I got to know him real well. But anyway, I got a job with them, and I really liked it. I thought I was making good money. I was driving a feed truck, and during that time, I was living with my grandparents, and my grandfather had an airstrip on the farm, and a lot of you may remember the Civil Air Patrol, and it was a Civil Air Patrol unit based there, and it was a sod runway, but they based search and rescue missions out of that. But my grandfather wanted somebody in the family to learn to fly. Well, that was me. I started riding with all of his buddies, and by the time I took lessons, I knew how to fly already. So I got my pilot's license, and I had a little plane, but I was top of the world, and then Uncle Sam came knocking. And I was drafted in 1965, and I went in service, and I was only in service about 8 weeks, and I was on my way to Germany. And here's this country boy, had never been nowhere but to Virginia from Tennessee and to Florida a couple times. And I'm in Germany in November, right before the holidays were to start. But I did well over there. My first job, though, it was working in a motor pool, and I changed truck tires. And one day I saw a sign on the bulletin board that said, anyone that would like to may sign up for the battalion commander's personal driver. Well, that's it. I said, boy, that beats changing truck tires. So I applied, and I beat out 16 other guys, and I got that job. And that was where I really got going in service, because the colonel that I drove for, we just really took a bonding to each other, and he saw that I got rank real quick, so I came right on up through the ranks pretty fast. And a year and a half later, about half of our unit was put on notice that we were going to Vietnam. Well, the colonel told me, he said, I don't want you to go. I want you to stay here. I've got a year left, and I'm going back to the States after a year, and I'd like to just keep you here. And I thought about that a few days, and I said, I can't let everybody go and leave me here. So I gave that up, and I went to Vietnam, and I stayed 13 months over there, and I was, again, richly blessed. I came out literally unscathed, and after that I came back, and as a lot of you know, when you were drafted, it was a requirement that your employer give your job back. And I came back to Holly Farms, and I said, I'm back, I want my job back. And they had a full crew in our department. But that was when my boss said to me, he says, you know, there's openings in long-distance transportation. Would you consider going down there? So at that time, I started driving a truck and long distance, and I just liked that. I really did. I was a single guy, and I liked being gone, and I really fell in love with that job. Well, one of my coworkers invited me to Sunday lunch one time, and little did I know he had an ulterior motive. He wanted to introduce me to his sister-in-law. So that's how I met my wife. A year and a half later, we were married, and we had 47 blessed years together. It was real good. But after a few years, a year of being married, I had our daughter came along, and after that, I said, you know, I can't drive a truck. I just can't be gone from home. I got to be home. So what I turned to, I went back to the restaurant business. That was what I knew, and I got a real good job with a big company, and actually 3 months later, I had 50 employees and was working a place that was open 7 days a week, and big responsibility for a 26-year-old. But anyway, I worked that a while, and my old boss from Holly Farms contacted me, and he said, we've got a transportation dispatch job. We'd love to have you back. And long story short, I went back. And from there, it kept developing. I came up through the ranks, and I was the Virginia Division traffic manager after about 2 years. And one of the responsibilities I had was pallets. And I had to keep up with the pallets, and they were spending a tremendous amount of money on pallets at that time. So I came up with a program that was a return method, and I wanted to institute that. I talked to my boss, and he said, fine, let's try it. As long as it don't cost us money, we'll do it. And that just expanded, and I told him I wanted to put the company in business of the return and capture and repair of these pallets. And they said, no, we're not in that business. So long story short, I said, well, I want to do it myself, and I got to start my business with their blessings. And that's where I started Interstate Pallet Company. And that was 1979. And a year later, I had expanded that business and expanded it, and Tyson Foods came along and bought Holly Farms, and I lost my best customer. And I thought, well, this is going to be tragic for my company, but it really wasn't. It was an opportunity, because I went to some of the other big companies in Richmond, and I instituted that program. And actually, companies like DuPont and Philip Morris, and it was a money-saving program. So anyway, I grew that business, and we developed, we had a tremendous amount of waste in it, and that was where I focused. I worked on that and worked on it, and I developed some equipment to grind scrap, actually, that had metal in it. And that's we're in the 80s, and you know, Richmond was a tobacco city, and there was a lot of small companies that did work for the tobacco companies, and they were on the decline. So I got a lot of good research and development out of those companies, developing separation screens and so forth. So we started grinding scrap, and my competition says, well, this will put him out of business. He can't afford to do this. But it was just the opposite. We developed some products, like we had a patented product called Soft Play, and that's what you see on playgrounds today. it's numerous names now, but that was the beginning. And I actually had testing done on falls and how deep it needed to be and did it scientifically. And I got my big break in that when I did the playground at Mary Munford School. And our governor's kids happened to be going there then. And I got a lot of good publicity out of that and put me on the way. But my company grew and grew, and I got involved with the National Trade Association, and I worked my way up through that. I was the national president in 1991, and things were going good. But my son finished at UVA, and he was supposed to come back and work in the business. Well, you know, things don't always work out like we see. He'd worked there since he was 15 years old, summers, holidays. And after he was out of school for about a year, he was still living at home. And we were riding home one afternoon. He said, "Dad," he said, "I got to tell you, this business just isn't for me." And
How did that make you feel?
well, at the time, I thought, well, that was my plan, and it kind of broke my bubble, if you will. But then I turned right around and told him, I said, you know, no matter what you do, you got to be happy doing it, and that's the main thing. And I didn't want, my daughter she was older, and she had already said, you know, this just isn't the business that I'm interested in. And so I said, well, we'll come up with a plan, because in the meantime, I had bought some land down in King William, and I wanted to raise beef cattle, and I thought my son was going to take over the business, and that was what I could do. But then all of a sudden, that was out. So we talked about it, and I said, "Do you know what you want to do?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to go back to VCU, and I'm going to get an associate degree in computer technology." He said, "That's what I want to do." So I said, "Yep, you got to be happy with what you do, so go for it." He said, "I'm still going to work, and I'm going to go nights," and he says, "It's going to take me a couple years." And but he said, "You know, I want to continue to work." And at the time, our company was probably at a peak, so I had an opportunity to merge with another company that was actually larger than me, that was based in Florida. And then we had another company in Texas that joined us, and there was 3 of us, and we formed a new company and merged the 3 together. And we worked that till 1996, and we started talking then about we were going on the merger and acquisition trail. So we started, and we bought several companies, and we were approached by a company, investment company in Houston, Texas, and they were excited about our business and what we were doing, and they wanted to work with us and take us public. So in April of '97, we were on the NASDAQ. We were listed in our company. So we grew that till 2000, and out of the 3 partners, there was one that had to stay, and that was me. I was the odd man out. So I stayed with it and helped the transition through it. And in 2001, we had grown that company to 37 locations, and we had about 2,700 employees. It was a big company. And we were approached by a plastics company in Germany, and we ended up selling it, the whole thing. So it sold twice. But that was good for me because I went back to the farm then. I was able to go back.
Would you say that that was your favorite thing, was the farm?
Well, I loved my wood sawmill business, but because I got to develop equipment and stuff like that. But, you know, I always wanted to go back to my roots. And I was blessed enough to have the wherewithal that I bought some land. And my wife wanted to do that too. She was an animal person. She was a big worker in the Humane Society. And so, you know me, I had some goals. I said, well, we're gonna start growing beef cows, and we're going to have a goal that we're going to raise the best beef at the cheapest price. So she was my partner, and we did everything together. She always joked about it. She said, Steve's always working on the cows, but she says, you know, my job's important too, because somebody has to hold the light at night. So, you know, but we started out with about 90 acres, and we had 15 cows, and at our peak we had 100 mama cows, and we grew the farm to 275 acres. So it was quite a business also. And I had 20 good years there. I was very blessed, and we did a lot of things, and we always stayed involved in church. That was a big part of our life. And our son got married. He married his high school sweetheart, and they got married in the cow pasture there, and that was a big event. We brought in the tents and did that. So lots of good memories from the farm. But I've also been blessed with 3 lovely grandchildren, and my son has been very successful in his own way, in his own business. He became a partner in the company 17 years ago, and he was part owner now. So he's made his own way in his own right. And my daughter too, she's been very successful. She works for the
They had a good
National
role model.
Company. Yeah, well, yeah, I think so.
They
Their
had
their mama did a good job, didn't
They
she,
had
Linda?
2 good role models. He was mentioning King William, and for those of you who know me, I lived in King William as well, which driving down the little road to go to where their farm was just the most pleasant experience, because it was just so calming and so comfortable, and to drive up and to see the cattle and all those sorts of things, it just brought you back to nature, and it was just a wonderful experience to visit them.
It was, and the way I got to know Linda, that's the reason, she's the reason we wound up here at Covenant Woods, or I did. She and my wife were in the Woman's Club, King and Queen Woman's Club together, and we've got a few good stories about that, don't we, Linda?
Yeah, well, and it was kind of nice to have somebody that sounded like me to talk to. I'm not quite as Tennessee sounding. I'm from Southwest Virginia, but it's kind of nice to have someone that has the same twang you do.
Yes, ma'am, it does.
Now stop it, because you're making me feel bad.
Uh-oh.
But I left out one thing I want to regress just for a minute. I was, right after we were on the farm permanently, I was approached by one of the local farmers to join the Rutan Club. And that's where, when I got in the Rutan Club, the number one thing that I could do was cook. And they needed a head cook, so I started cooking, and I still do today. I'm still their cook. I love to cook, and we've fed groups as big as 600 people. So we've got a nice kitchen there, and we built a new facility about 13 years ago, and I was in charge of building that, and I'm very, very proud of it. And we worked renting the building and doing a catering service, and we paid for that, the place like that.
Lots
So-
of times in King William, there will be all kinds of opportunities at the Ruritan Center. And if there's food involved, you know that Steve is in the kitchen. Steve is the one to go to.
I always enjoyed that. But anyway, in 2016, my wife got ill, and she passed away in 2017. And I just couldn't stay at the farm any longer. And that's when, we were planning to move to Covenant Woods before she passed away. And I didn't come at the time, and I moved to our river place, and I stayed down there about a year. But then Covenant Woods contacted me and said, "We're tearing these cottages down back, and thought you might be interested." Well, that's where I live, in Bradford Court now. And I've been here, it'll be 2 years in March. So I've been here quite a while, but I really like it here. I mean, I involved with the garden, and there again, Linda was in charge of that, so we were buddies.
Well, I was going to tell a story about that, because I had seen, from the bios that we get, that Steve was going to be moving here after, the years passed. And I was up at the garden one day, no one was up there but me, and this truck runs up the road, and somebody starts getting out, and I looked up, and I'm going, "Steve, is that you?" And it was, and we walked through the garden, and he was talking about maybe wanting to plant something. I found him a row, and that was the start of a lot of work at the garden that Steve has done. He's done some really good things for us, and we really appreciate all of the volunteer hours that you spend up there keeping it good and planting good stuff too.
Right. Well, that's something I enjoy, and that takes me back to my roots, and I enjoy that very, very much. But I guess I've pretty much told the overview of my story. I've probably left out some things, but anyway, that's
Share some of the
much.
things you're doing now.
Well, now I volunteer a couple different places other than here. I work in the garden, and I've got my garden spots up there. But I also I've been a member of Mount Vernon Baptist Church for 38 years over on Knuckles Road. We always commuted back and forth to church, and I do a lot of work in that church. That's a big church, and there's always opportunities to volunteer. And just today, I was helping a widow lady put shelves in her garage, and I said I'd worked over there all day. But yes, that's the one thing, and I'm still real active in the Ruritans, and I just am thankful to the good Lord that I've had such a blessed life. I've really been blessed, and I can't give that enough credit.
It's really interesting how people's lives pass, at different times in your lifetime. And I don't know if Steve was going to get into this or not, but he's working on a project up in the Shenandoah Valley that has something to do with an old log cabin. But when he was sharing about it up at the garden one day, I said, "Well, where is this place?" And basically he said, "Well, you probably don't know where this is. It's just a little place, but have you ever heard of a place called Kieseltown?" Well, lo and behold, my son had purchased an old house that was built in 1910. And come to find out, it's only about, 1 mile as the crow flies
Yes,
from where this cabin is that Steve's working on. So
yeah.
it's a small world.
Yeah. I enjoy all kinds of carpentry type project, renovation jobs, and that's very satisfying. And yeah, that's going to be a unique place when I get through with it. It sits on 91 acres, and it's actually been in a little company that I own half of, and that's something I didn't even mention was the electronics recycling business that I got involved in by mistake, really 20 years ago. And I'll just regress a bit and talk about that. It was I decided to expand my farming operation, and I bought an old greenhouse operation, a nursery down at Tappahannock. It was called Apple Grove Nursery, and they had gone out of business, and Essex Bank was selling it. And I thought, boy, that'd work good with the farm. So I was lucky enough to bid on it and get that. And after I did my research, actually I hired a graduate student from Tech that was an agronomy student, and we did a study on, best practices in the nursery business. And after we completed that, I said, oh, geez, this is not a business I want to be in. So it just, the dollars that I had to spend and the dollars for return just didn't make good sense. So anyway, I decided to just dismantle it and sell off the equipment. And I had a young man that worked for me at the farm, and he and I started taking that apart. And one day this guy happened by, and he said, I'm looking for some space to rent. And I said, well, we may have something here. And I said, what do you do? And he said, I recycle electronics, computers and what have you. And I said, well, tell me more. He said, well, I've got real good ideas, but I don't have any money. And I said, well, I've got a space we can rent you up here, this old packing shed. I'm not using it. And he looked at it and he said, that'll work. And he said, but how much rent do I have to pay? And I told him, I said, well, I could probably let you have it for a couple months rent free to help you get started. And we proceeded from there, and he moved in. He had one guy helping him, but he had no equipment. And I kept watching him, and one day I approached him and I says, I'll buy some things you need, and maybe we can become partners in this. And I said, you don't have any collateral, so we'll just say if you're successful, I own half of the business. If you're not, so be it. So anyway, that's been 20 years, and that is. He's done very well. We actually had a warehouse in Elkton and a storefront in Harrisonburg there at JMU, and over the years, and we've got a storefront in Tappahannock across from Lowry's down there now, and the warehouse now covers the whole nursery, 10 acres. So it's been a successful business, and he still tells the story about the day he came by and said he couldn't afford to pay any rent, but he wanted to rent a building. So anyway, that's a pretty good story. And that's where this cabin renovation came in. This property has been in that company, and back about 3 months ago, I just said, that we need to fix that place up, and it's an interesting old house. It's a 100-year-old log house that's built out of 12 by 12s, and it's right up on the side of the mountain. Actually, you got 1.5 miles of driveway, and that driveway is almost straight up. So anyway, it's interesting, and I'm finding that very rewarding working on that. That's another little tidbit that I'd left out there.
Well, and part of being happy is keeping busy, right? A big part of being happy is keeping yourself busy and doing things that mean something.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. It's ever so important. And, that's stressed here at Covenant Woods. Find something to do. I'll tell you, if you live here and can't find anything to do, something's wrong. You don't want to do anything because there's all kinds of different things you can get involved in, places you can volunteer, and, you know, I think that's what keeps us healthy and good minds.
So too, yeah.
It really is, really is. Okay.
Anything else you want to tell us about? Anything else you want to share with us?
Well-
You've done a great job, so I'm not going to push you.
We've been around the horn, and I've not actually been. I probably hadn't told it in a good pattern, but to get a gist of what my life's been and where I've come from and where I've wound up. But I'm just thankful each and every day for the life that I've had. It's been great.
Even during the pandemic, you can remember the good days, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Linda, do you have anything you need us?
No, I think he's covered it pretty well.
Yeah.
I didn't interject any questions or anything because it was just really interesting to listen to the way that his life path went and how many folks interacted with him and how he's interacted with other people in a very positive way. So we're very appreciative of your time and your sharing.
Thank you very
This was
much.
great, thank you. I have one more thing I want to tell everyone before you all leave. Our next All in the Family will be on December 2nd, and that will be our last program for this year. But we will be back in January because I have a whole line of people lined up for you all to get to know. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and be careful with where you go and what you do. Thank you.
Good night.
We got